Hey everyone, good morning. How is everyone doing? Good. My name is Hunter Gilmore. I am a journalist, a producer, and the host of Hunting for Answers on the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. I'm also a proud alum of Clark Atlanta, class of 2018. So thank you so much for having me back, and it's good to be back. So why I'm here. So through Hunting for Answers, we share the stories of missing and murdered Black women and girls. However, the mission goes far beyond that. It involves things like prevention, awareness, protecting one another, and encouraging safer communities. So let's dive into that. Chanel and Vernique are my two experts here. Go ahead and before we dive in, just tell everyone a little, I'm sure they probably already know about you, Chanel.
You go first.
But Vernique, explain to everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am Vernique. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and therapist. My scope of work is in relational trauma and healthy relationships. And so I be yapping on TikTok and Instagram about how to have healthier relationships, among other things, because there's always something to yap about. I also work at a nonprofit as a director serving veterans experiencing homelessness, but I am really passionate about helping people to have healthier relationships, because I do believe even at this age, no matter what your relational style is, your preferences, whatever, the quality of your relationships determines the quality of your life. But a lot of us don't learn how to do that, especially a lot of us in Black communities, right? And I'm sure we'll talk about that some more and what I mean by that. But it is so important that we learn relational health, wellness, and safety as early as possible, so that way we can make better decisions, because we don't realize how the impact of what you're doing right now in college, or even before that in high school, is going to impact the rest of your life. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Hunter.
Thank you, Vernique. And Chanel, did you want to briefly?
Hi, everybody, again. I'm Chanel Hudson O'Connor. I am a product of the AU Center. I went to Morehouse. I'm going to say that aloud. I love Clark. This is my fourth semester here. I'm a television producer. I am a true crime aficionado. And I'm happy to have Hunter here and with you guys again. I love you guys.
Thank you, Chanel. All right, so let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in. Vernique and Chanel, when we talk about protecting one another and building safer campuses, what does that look like beyond the typical safety tips that we hear? And what does relational awareness look like in real life? So either of you can kick us off.
You can start first.
So I think beyond and I know we're going to get into it some more later, but being able to read the relational room, right? Knowing kind of what you want before you step into any space, knowing what your intent is, what your boundaries are, what your standards are, what your expectations are, right? For yourself, not contingent upon what anybody else thinks or the influence of others, but kind of knowing and being certain about yourself. I talk to my clients, and I'm talking about people from 22 years old to 50 and 60 years old about boundaries and standards and having a level of self-trust. And it will literally follow you for your whole life, and it can have impact even on your safety, right? We have a part to play in our own safety, but it can play a part in your safety when you don't have a level of self-trust, right? When you don't trust that gut feeling of what you're seeing when you do read the room, when you don't know what your standards and boundaries are, so you're allowing other people that you interact with to dictate what those things are. So I think beyond watch your drink, make sure that you're moving together in a group, knowing and trusting what you see is very important, and setting a standard for yourself on what you'll accept and expect.
Thank you. And kind of building off of that, from your work with young adults, what are some emotional or social challenges that might make it harder to kind of recognize when a dynamic is becoming unsafe?
I think, and I can imagine sitting in your seat and what I'm about to say being like, girl, whatever. But I remember I was talking to somebody recently. I'm 32 years old. And I remember, nobody's gonna say I look too young? Everybody was like, yeah, that checks. Wow. Okay. I see how y'all, no, I'm just playing. I'm messing. But I remember being in a seat like this and feeling like I knew everything. And I turned 32 this year, and I was telling a friend recently, I was like, I really don't, respectfully to everybody, I really didn't realize how dumb I was until I turned 31. And so you get to a space, I think, especially when you have all of this independence and you're making all of your own decisions, like sometimes we can be our own enemy in that we think that we know so much. And so we don't lean on people who are older than us, or even the people that we have around us in order to help us build our discernment, our emotional capacity. We don't want to, like, it's hard sometimes to listen to what other people may be telling us, but sometimes those are our best mirrors as we are learning and building our own development, right? And they say, like, allegedly your brain development really formulates at 25, but that's not entirely true. You have the capacity to, it's true to some extent, but you have the capacity now to build those neural pathways and the understanding of the world. But your biggest enemy may be you standing in your own way of learning and wanting a specific outcome, right? And wanting, like, no consequences be damned. I want to see this through for the plot. And we think that, like, because, you know, y'all don't have mortgages and bills and stuff like that, that it can feel inconsequential, but it does add up. You're training your brain every single day, and you're training your brain, especially now in these formative years. And so I think one of the things that we forget is, like, you can actually make responsible and healthy decisions now, even if your friends don't agree, even if it makes you oddball out. So I have a tolerance now to, like, everybody being like, you're not fun. But it's like, nah, I read the room and I'm not going. And I think it's hard to say that at this age because we don't want to always be the eyeball out. We want to be in community, and that's a human thing. It's not just the age thing. But can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does anybody struggle, do you think, with boundaries and being like, nah, I'm not going, even if you feel a little weird in your stomach?
We'll actually be touching on that later on. So you're like, definitely.
Oh, yeah, okay. But yeah, so this is a real thing, right? And it's not even because you're quote unquote dumb, as I was saying facetiously earlier, but it really is this emotional need that we have. Some of you are away from home. This is your first time making, like, these core decisions for yourself. We don't want to be left out. Like, feeling left out puts us in this, it puts us in like almost like fight, flight, freeze. It puts us in a, what's the word that I'm looking for? It activates, like, our nervous system, feeling like alone, feeling separate from the group. But learning to build up a tolerance for that, I think, is really, really important and can ultimately save not just your life, but other people's lives, especially if you have influence in that way.
Absolutely.
And I want to piggyback off of, I think that when you come to a college campus, you're inundated with people that you've never met before, people that you don't know, people that are unfamiliar to you. And I think a huge part of being a college student on a campus, whether historically black or not, is culpability and holding people culpable. A lot of, especially during my experience in 2009, I would hear stories of people getting sexually assaulted. And I'm like, are you gonna say something? Or I heard stories of people getting STDs from sex that they had from someone. Are you gonna say something? And I think that a lot of the times people are like, because it's an embarrassing thing, opposed to setting up the next person for success, not having to deal with that. So I think it's also having a network of people on campus that you could connect with, paying attention to the campus news. I know recently you guys had incidents on the campus that was kind of like shocking. Some of you may have known the girls, some of you may have not. But it's always good to stay in tune to what's happening on the campus, because you could be going to a danger zone and you bypass the morning news or bypass something. So as I've gotten older, I watch the news every night. That sounds crazy. When I was growing up, I used to be like, oh, that's old people stuff. But when you watch the news, you're informed, you're aware, you understand the potentials of dangers that can happen. So I would just piggyback off of that.
Thank you for adding that. So now we're going to move right along. We're going to connect some of this to a real life scenario. So up on the screen, we have the story of Destiny Williams, and we covered her story recently. And her story really highlights just how quickly things can escalate in a relationship. We had a clip, but I don't want to mess up everything we got going on right now. So just to briefly tell you guys, she, one early morning, she was like attacked at gunpoint, held at gunpoint by her boyfriend. And luckily she was found alive. So, that's such a blessing, because many times, it may end in a more tragic situation. But it still goes to show you that the whole situation started with someone who was so close to her, who she trusted a lot. And so being aware of the relationships that we have. So Chanel, I wanted to ask you, why might someone miss misinterpret or even minimize early red flags, especially if they're the person who's actually in the situation?
I think it's trauma. I think a lot of the times people trauma respond. So the last time I was here, I talked to you guys about the Mean Girls of Morehouse, but some of the members in the Mean Girls of Morehouse, when the Vibe article came out, were carjacked and kidnapped. Right across the street behind Morehouse, there's a gas station on that hill that dips. And they were going there to buy some marijuana. And back in the day, you had to go to the trap house. This is the kind of the hood a little bit. You had to go and, find your little, guy to get your little 5-bag, whatever. And they ended up meeting these guys who pretended that they were into like queer people, like, oh yeah, hot, come on, da, da. And my group of my friends, maybe 4 of them, pulled up to, I guess, being fast or being like, oh, he's cute, you know how it goes. And they held out a gun. And actually, one of my friends said, you're not gonna rob us, are you? And he literally pulled out a gun and took it out, and he was like, yeah. And stuffed 2 of my friends in the trunk of the car, drove around. My friend was smart enough to lie and say he got a refund on his refund card and was lying to the people. Called 911, 911 hung up the phone. Called campus police, they said on the phone with campus police at Morehouse and Clark were able to identify the car to the West End. You could go online and look it up too. It was the craziest story. But I say all that to say, had we had not been looking for attention, or had my friends had not been interested, if those guys weren't attractive, my friends probably be like, I'm okay. But I think an early red flag would be like, okay, you guys are not from here. You guys are meeting up in a strange place, and you still go. And I think it's like that responding to like danger. Almost like if your parents were in the car, they'd be like, this don't look right, keep it moving. But I think during that age of that young, impressionable age where our brains are still developing, it was like, cute boys, they like us, oh my God, let's go. And they got weed too. So it was kind of like us responding to the attention that we probably never got at home or never got at, in our own environments. And it resulted in things. So I think that people miss out on red flags because they're trauma responding to whatever traumas they've had to deal with. Listen, you're coming from a high school environment into a college environment without parents, without supervision, and you want to do things that your parents typically would tell you not to do.
Right.
And so I think that is like a rebellious trauma response when it comes to ignoring red flags. And then when something happens, it's a state of shock, and then you create PTSD, and that PTSD follows you for the rest of your life. So yeah, it's if something doesn't feel right, you should be like, no. And even if it turns out to be right, at least you trusted your gut. And I do believe that your gut is the first person that you should have a relationship with in college before you go out there. You have to trust yourself. Because if you don't trust yourself in a college environment, when you get onto the real world, those people are sharks. They're not as innocent as another 19-year-old or 18-year-old. They're dangerous. And that's how traffickers happen. I don't know if you heard of the windshield where like men are pulling the windshield up, they're flattening the tire, and like, women, they're watching them going to a store, they come out, oh my God, my windshield, very innocently, and you go out to put it down and someone snatches you up, and now there's no trace, there's no anything. So I think it's just trusting your gut is the number one, first sign of like, hey, I trust myself. But I think that's why people don't necessarily do it, because of their trauma, honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to add, Vernique?
The early signs.
Yes.
Or why people ignore them.
Like why people might ignore early red flags.
Oh yeah, I agree with pretty much everything Chanel said. I think sometimes it's hard to see, right? Like everything sounds good. Like he's cute. He wants to hang out. Let me pull
he's
up.
attractive. Mm-hmm.
But I think, and this is just dating advice in general, I think we spend far too much time wondering if people like us and not enough time wondering if we like them. And that takes time to find out and to develop, right? And so maybe we don't be so quick for the first link. Maybe we take time to get to know people. And I know like we want to feel something, right? We want to do it for the plot. We want to experience certain things. But like you said, like sometimes being willing to take a little bit more time and slow things down is going to give you time to evaluate, but it's also going to give you time to notice what that person is really on. If somebody is trying to rush you, if somebody is trying to push you and pressure you, they're not really in it for the right reasons, no matter what. And this is across genders, like across all genders. It doesn't matter how interested, like interest can wait. If they cannot wait for you to be ready to do your assessment of things, and we're not even just talking about having sex, just linking up can be a issue, right? Be willing to take time. Be willing to allow people to wait.
Alrighty.
And also bring a friend. Bring that messy friend, the loud friend, the one who's always telling you, don't do that, girl. Bring somebody with you that could fight. Bring a bag of rocks. Bring some mace. Get you a little, I'm serious. You got to, because sometimes you're fighting for your life, and sometimes in those situations, it helps. I just keep thinking about my friends who were carjacked and kidnapped, and I'm just like, they had each other. Even though they were stuffed in a trunk, trying to call 911 at any point, they were like, hey, if we try to band up and attack this guy, maybe something will happen. So bring somebody with you, bring that loud friend that nobody don't like. And even if she makes you uncomfortable, at least you would have avoided a potential death or a dangerous situation that would have been harmful to you.
Absolutely. So when we zoom out, Destiny's story, and many's like hers, isn't an isolated situation. And the data tells us that this happens way more often than people realize. So national data says 1 in 5 women and 1 in 16 men will experience sexual assault during their time in college. At HBCUs, 14% of women will report completed or near completed sexual assault. So, as you can see, this is an area where many campuses across the nation are finding themselves vulnerable. Vernique, I'd like to ask you, when we take a look at these numbers, what contributes to students being more vulnerable when it comes to things like dating violence, coercion, or manipulation?
I think it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, right? Like, there's so much, you literally went from your parents' house for a lot of you, or whoever your caregiver was, to immediately being on your own. And that's kind of shocking. And I wish there was like a transitional period for people when they go to college. But a lot of us, you know, well, you don't know, but I grew up experiencing homelessness. And so for me, college was the first time I had a stable home. So a transitional period wouldn't have been ideal for me. Some of you come from abusive or really restrictive environments. And so, you know, you come from one space to another. I'm also Caribbean and West African, and grew up in a more restrictive environment. I'm also an only child. So no matter whatever your background is, whatever part of what I said that you can relate to, especially if you grew up in a restrictive environment, you went from the world being handed to you in bits and pieces to the world being given to you all at once. And that makes you vulnerable because you're naive. You don't really know how things work yet. You're still figuring it out, right? The first time I learned how to pay bills was in college, let alone how to date. Because if you come from a Caribbean background or a restricted background, you're not dating, at least not in a way that they know. You know, you're not doing all that, especially if you grew up very hyper-religious, as I did. So I knew nothing. But when I got into that world, when I got into college, like the world was all of it was in front of me. So I'm gonna engage. So I think sometimes it's a lack of, and I actually blame our parents, our teachers, our caregivers for not putting us up on game on relational dynamics, on healthy relationship tips, on allowing us to date in front of them, so that way they can correct us in real time and show us what's what. So I think that's really it. Like like college students are vulnerable because they aren't always taught about the world, and it's just such a shock to go from somebody else dictating almost every move you make to you having full power. You're taking it all in real time, and that's really hard to do. And so it makes you more vulnerable because there's somebody out there. I went to Valdosta State undergrad. There were people in the area who knew what college students look like. They were waiting, right? You have literal predators who are looking to scam you. You have seniors waiting to scheme on freshmen. I remember I started the summer semester instead of the fall, and there were seniors waiting for us. It was a thing to like see who you can bag. You're that freshman that don't know nothing, and the next thing you know, that next semester all their girlfriends is back, and it's like, wait a minute, right? You're in a mess. So all of that to say, I think it's the vulnerability of it, of just having that quick transition into adulthood.
Alrighty, so we're going to move along to one of my favorite parts. So I want everyone in the room to ask yourself, what comes to your mind when you hear phrases like relational awareness or dating literacy? And then think about that. Chanel and Vernique, I want you guys, before we define these terms, I want to know, what do you think college students imagine when they hear things like dating literacy or relational awareness? And what do you guys wish that they better understood about it?
I think that I think that when you go to college, it's very important to find inclusive groups that are not familiar with you. For example, when I was at Morehouse, I dibbled and dabbled in a lot of different men. And some of those men that I would like dibble in the dorm, I would see them on campus with their girlfriends. And I'd be like, oh, wow, this is crazy. And a lot of the times I wanted to go tell her, like, you need to leave him alone. But then I oftentimes thought about, well, if I do that, she's gonna think I try to took her man. She's gonna think it gets dangerous when you're thinking about other things or exposing people. So for me, I'm always cautiously aware, even with some of my just single friends. I'd be like, girl, ask a friend. Like, you just never know who people know. There's even groups on Facebook that you can go and post someone that you're dating, and people will tell you, I dated him, don't deal with him, his baby mama crazy. And so I think that a lot of the times people don't do their research. And like that whole honeymoon phase of dating is like, oh, everything is great. And then you find out things a year later, but you've already wasted a year of your time. You've already connected bonds with a person that you did not really know. And then it becomes super toxic. And that trajectory, it follows you for the rest of your dating history in college and beyond. And I hear people in their 30s say, when I was in college, you're not in college anymore. So I think it's important when you're dating or you're thinking about dating is to just get to know the person. There's nothing wrong with being friends. I look at it like that. But like, you know, sometimes you get hot and heavy. Sometimes you're in the moment. Similar to you, I'm Jamaican. My parents are pastors. I grew up not even watching MTV or regular television. And then coming to Morehouse and seeing so much
Debauchery. No.
Just debauchery and just, like, it was almost like, it was a culture shock, but it was also like, well, damn, what do I do? Like, how do I do it? And then you just want to engage with everyone. And then you realize that the person that you engage with just got tested for STD. And then you're at the clinic, you know, what's going on? So I think it's just important to do your research and to check on the people that you're dating. I think that's the healthiest thing, especially in 2025. You never know who you're gonna date. I wanna know who their parents are, what your credit score is. Do you have a credit score? Do you have a credit card? What kind of car do you drive? What kind of, like, you have to know these things because that helps you understand the fabric of the person that you're dealing with.
So, before we move along, let's quickly define what relational awareness and dating literacy is. So relational awareness is knowing yourself, paying attention to the dynamic between you and someone else, and being able to recognize what's healthy and what isn't, whether that's emotionally, physically, or socially. It's a skill of noticing patterns, trusting instincts, and understanding how a relationship is making you feel so you can protect yourself. And then dating literacy is the ability to understand what healthy dating looks like, how to build trust, communicate boundaries, recognize red flags, and navigate digital interactions and make informed, safe decisions. So, next, I would like to ask Chanel a little bit about the culture. So, when it comes to music, TV, and social media, do you think that these things are shaping what young people accept as normal in relationships, and how does that impact safety for everyone?
I think social media for sure. I don't think this generation is big on watching TV as much as I was. Like, I was a reality TV person. Like, had to watch every episode of Love and Hip Hop, every episode, especially coming from a family where I wasn't allowed to watch TV. But I think what social media does is it creates false perceptions of what you think you want for yourself. And then you start to explore that in real time. And then you go on this search trying to find people that you see on social media. But that's a small glimpse into the life of people that you don't know. You don't know if when that camera cuts off, that girl's getting beat up. You don't know if it's a toxic relationship. Oftentimes we see video footages come out of relationships and you're like, oh, they look so happy. Or how did this happen? It's because we're getting a glimpse of what they choose to show us. So I oftentimes say when you're watching television or movies or social media, perception does not beat reality. You have to look at it like, oh, that's cute, but that's not for me. Now, if you end up with that same situation with someone who treats you, gives you the world, gives you all the things that you want, great. But I think a lot of the times people, especially when we're younger and we're more impressionable, we go into situations thinking like, oh, I saw her on Facebook get, you know, roses and whatever for her anniversary. And so I need to find a man that's gonna do that for me too. You might meet someone who's never been introduced to the romantic side of dating. You guys may have to grow together. You guys may have to learn together. So I think that social media definitely creates perception, whereas the reality of what happens is you end up with someone who gives you the first 6 months of your life that's great, and then after that you start to figure out some stuff is wrong. But by that point you've had sex, you guys are engaged, you guys are intertwined, and now you feel stuck. And now it becomes a battle to get out of something that you feel stuck in, opposed to just, making it more of a self-awareness thing to be like, oh, okay, well, you're cool, but I don't have any expectations. So I think social media, television, music, it creates this false expectation in your world. And then when you enter the world, you're like, wait, why is no men like this? Or I oftentimes see people in comments whenever they see Sierra or Russell Wilson, they say, God, what did it say? God, I see what you're doing for others. And I'm just like, but Sierra was with Future, who cheated on her. She made a song about it. She was with Bow Wow, who cheated. You have to think about her history, but people don't look at that. They look at the moment and they forget about the history of a person to get to where Sierra is. So oftentimes I tell people, don't have expectations from people and just go in there with a open mind of like, we're cool, we're friends. But once you create that expectation and they don't give you what you think that you want, then it becomes a problem. Yeah. And I think that's unrealistic for dating or healthy dating at all.
Yeah.
Can I add to that too?
Yeah.
I'm seeing, across ages, I am really seeing in my clients the impact of social media on relational perception, right? Everybody, whatever you see, like how you mentioned with Sierra, the person giving you roses, everybody has either over-idealized and oversimplified what it takes to have a healthy relationship, or they have given up on the steps, because when you asked a question earlier about like, what do people, my assumption of what people think about when they think of relational awareness and dating is like, oh, that's a lot of work. I'm not, that's too much. I'm not worried about all that. But it really does take all that. And we're actually supposed to learn it from a young age. But when you get into adulthood, you get into a space where you're learning it all at once. So it's like, that's OD. But I think that it's so important because like people either, like I said, they oversimplify what it takes to have a healthy relationship, or they, give up altogether and say, well, you know what, let me just get what I want. So then it becomes hyper-transactional, right? There's some level of transaction in relationships, but hyper-transactional, it goes too far. So I'm seeing a lot of young women who are like getting in situations where it's like, well, as long as he take me on trips, buy me flowers, give me money, that's it. But one, you're putting yourself in position to become a victim, right? And that's you want more than that. You just don't think you can have that because what's the lady? Sprinkle. And, whoever your favorite rapper is that's out here, saying whatever. Whole time, there's Megan talking about popping it and cooked for Klay Thompson and his family for Thanksgiving, right? So you gotta be careful and really filter out like the messaging that you're hearing. And being okay with, like, that's why I said developing your own standards and stuff, that should be your template and not everything you see, because half of it is manufactured. More than half of it is manufactured, but we ingest it as though it's fact, and then we filter it out into the world and have these like adverse reactions to what somebody else is probably not really doing.
And to whom much is given from a man, much will be required in return. So y'all can go on these trips if you want to, bang, bang, when you get there. You hear stories all the time of people going on trips with people, and they're like, oh, he flew me out. And then when they get there, the man's in the car like, so what you finna do? She's like, I wanted to come and enjoy myself. What you mean what I want to do? And he's like, I just spent this money on this. I've seen girls, they document it. They get there, they're in the car with a stranger. The guy flew them out. The guy wants some sex. And she's like, oh, I didn't come here for that. And they turn around, drop him back off to the airport.
And that's the best case scenario.
That's the best case scenario. She ended up, doing something she ain't supposed to be doing. So I think that it does come down to what your expectation for yourself is. And just treating yourself before you let another man treat you. It's always good to let a man see that you can take care of yourself. Because the moment that he feels like he needs to take care of you is the moment that you become, like, I guess, his victim. For some people, not all, but for some men, it's like the moment they do something for you, they think that you owe them something. And that's where a lot of sexual assault comes from, especially in relationships. It's like, you owe me this. And I'm like, I don't owe you anything,
right. And you don't. You don't owe anybody anything.
Mm-mm.
Absolutely. So now let's bring this a little bit closer to home, to campus life and to the everyday situations that students might find themselves in. So up on the screen, you see we have a few tips for dating safety on campus. Number one, is know your non-negotiables and believe behavior, not words. So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'd like to dive into it a little bit more. So Vernique, for the students who may struggle with setting boundaries, you were getting at this earlier, what's a realistic first step that they can take to start establishing non-negotiables?
Yeah, I want to make one correction to something that you said. You said believe behaviors, not words. I want you to believe both.
Okay.
Because in that, when you find the contradiction, that is what's going to also help you, right? Because somebody might say, like, Chanel, I want to be in a relationship with you. You want to say, but you like, nah, like, you cool, like, I'll mess with you, but so we end up in a situationship, right? And so in my mind, I want a relationship, but Chanel does not. But Chanel wants to benefit from what she gets from me being around. So, you know, I cook for Chanel. I do her laundry sometimes, you know what I'm saying? I take her out on nice dates. But Chanel's like, yeah, like I'll take it. Yeah, I love you. I care about you. Yeah, it's all good. But you know, what's understood don't have to be explained. Her actions, because she's interacting with me, can tell me that she wants a relationship. So I stay. But her words are very clear that she doesn't. When I ask for commitment, when I ask to meet my friends and family. So I want you to believe both, because you will see that in Chanel is a contradiction. She's telling me that she doesn't want anything, but she act like she do. That should be information enough for me to set a boundary.
Yeah.
To say, you know what, you're not meeting me fully. You can meet me with your actions, but I want you to meet me with commitment. And commitment requires verbiage. It requires us to sit down and decide what that means to us. And so I think a way for us to start, and this is what I get all my clients to do. I was looking it up earlier, there's a website called, and you can really Google it, but you have to know your core values. And they may change. They may change in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the line, but you keep revisiting it. You write down your core values. So there's this website called SaturdayGift.com, and this is just my favorite one, but like I said, you can just Google core values list, SaturdayGift.com/core-values-list. And it'll give you some examples, things from faith, hard, originality, passion, but identify 7 core values that you have, that you want to live by and that you already live by, because sometimes we're too aspirational, right? So what do I already live by? What's actually important for me when I think about a relationship, when I think about myself and how I want to show up? Because again, we often think about how we want a person to show up for us, and we don't think about what it is that we actually need to have reception. So I could say that I want a man who takes care of me and does this and that, but is that really what I need? Because if I'm pretty self-sufficient, that's not what I need. What I actually need is emotional support. But I'm leaving that off the list because I'm just thinking about the aesthetics of the relationship and not the reality of it. So identifying your core values and then building your standards based off of that. So one of my core values is peace. And so for me, my boundary would be, I do not engage with people who could cause me to abandon my peace. So the moment that I realize that when I'm with Chanel, I feel good. When I leave Chanel, all of a sudden I'm like confused because I'm like, how could she say that she wants this? But you're disrupting my peace. So that right there tells me that you're not in alignment with me. You're not in alignment with my core values, and I gotta go. And so boundaries and knowing that ahead of time and knowing our core values helps us to make decisions ahead of time. So that way, when we come into the situation, we already know what we're not accepting. You can say whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, but I'm not going because I've already established before I got in the room, before I got in the relationship, before I got in that space with you, what I was and was not going to do. So I think that's a great way to start with setting boundaries if you struggle with it.
So, of course, we know that we're now living in a world where a lot of connections are taking place online, you know, in the DMs and on social media, things like that. And that's adding a whole nother layer to relational awareness. So, since so many connections do start online, what should students look out for before moving someone from the app into their real lives?
FaceTime, document everything. Let me tell you something. I hear stories all the time of women who meet men, and then when they go, like, they end up dead or they end up something happened. When police investigate, they find out all these things because they were smart enough to document. So I say, if you meet someone online, I think you should set the standards of what you want to happen. If you want to have sex, be honest. Say, I want to have protected sex in a safe environment. It's so easy to say that. It's like people think it's weird, but it's not. Because you end up having sex anyway, you know what I'm saying? But being honest and open with someone, oh, he's cute, I just want to, bone him. that's a smarter way, but it's also documenting your experience. Screen record, screenshot, snapshot, send it to your friends, post it somewhere that if something happens to you, there is some type of a trail. But I oftentimes will say this: when you meet a person online, there's no rush to link up. Like nowadays, the dating sites they're not personal. It's not like a personal. Back in the day, they used to call it personal ads, where you could go and like, I'm 6'2" and I love walks on the beach. And now it's just like, no face, no case. Like, let me see your boobs. Like, you look at all their private pictures, it's booties and it's everything else other than getting to know the person. So what I would tell you is just take time. Don't rush into getting to know someone online. If you do happen to want to meet up with them because you're impulsive, like I was in college, go somewhere that's open, like a library or a diner, a restaurant, church. I used to invite my dates to church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did. I want to see how you praise the Lord. And it was, it was kind of like, well, girl, why are we at church? Because it's church. And I know all these people in here are angry for the Lord, and they're going to beat your little behind if you try something. So I feel like you create dates of safety before you go, if you want to have impulse. But for the most part, I'm going to tell you something. 98% of the people that you meet on the internet, they just want to have sex. So you got to just make a choice in your mind, like, do I want to be a whore today? Or do I, you just have to make that conscious decision. And then once you make the decision, go have fun. Safe fun, but you may have a different perspective.
No, I mean, I don't have a different perspective, but I do think like, I'm gonna be the old lady in the room. Like, if you do realize that you want to have sex with somebody, and I'm also echoing what you said and what I said earlier, like there really is no rush, y'all. I promise you're not gonna die from like blue balls or something. Like, you're just not. So allowing yourself, at least go on one public outing with that person first, because your safety matters more than an orgasm, I promise you. You need to know if that person is willing to hear your no, which, by the way, you're allowed to say no. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to change your mind after the condom is open. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to change your mind. I'm saying that because me personally, I had a hard time realizing in college that I was actually allowed to say no. You buying me flowers? To you. Yeah, because it was like, oh, all these boys want me. I mean, I guess like I don't want to, but I actually want intimacy, closeness. But I'll settle for sex. And so learning and knowing that you are allowed to say no, you're allowed to give alternatives, even if they're like, man, even if it means losing them. Because if you're not willing, and now this is toxic for a therapist to say, but if you're not willing to play my game, especially as the person that's more vulnerable here, if you're not willing to play by my quote unquote rules, by my boundaries, you're not getting nothing from me. Now, it's easier to say at 25, 30, 32, but at this age, knowing like you really are allowed to say no, you don't have to say yes just to keep somebody around. I think that's the first thing, right? Going in with a no ready on your lips, because the moment somebody violates your boundary and what you need to feel safe, and you need to know what it is you need to feel safe. And so that way you can communicate that, but being willing to say like, no, slow down, I need a second, and no, is huge.
And being willing to mace them if they try you.
Well,
like, mace is great. Make sure I get some mace in your keychain. I'm serious. I had mace my whole collegiate.
Isn't it illegal now? I found out. I think
well,
in
guns
Georgia,
are not illegal, so it could be a mace or it could be a bullet.
Things have been said. That's facts.
You're poison,
You ain't lying.
Okay, that is hilarious. I'm actually excited for what's next. Really quickly, we're going to get a little bit more of Chanel's insights just about inclusivity, because we know that identity has a lot to do with shaping a lot of the realities that we're discussing. So Chanel, when it comes to relational awareness, dating safety, how do we make sure that this conversation is including everyone, including trans people, members of LGBTQ community, and others?
I think that you have to, when you encounter trans people, gay people, lesbian people, you just have to have an open mind, and you have to judge every individual accordingly. Not every trans person is reflective of all trans people, just like all black people are not reflective of all black people. There's certain black people who don't engage in ratchet behavior. There's certain black people who judge people who engage in ratchet behavior. We're not a monolith. So if you have an encounter with a trans person, that trans person does you dirty, judge them for what they did. Don't go judging the entire community. You could literally lose friendships. You could lose people who genuinely care about you. I will say I've saved so many of my Spelman sisters, my Clark sisters, just from talking to men that I dealt with. And it may sound crazy, but it was almost like a system that we had, like, girl, don't do that. Or, girl, he ain't gonna like you, girl, he beats on girls. What I heard, it wasn't even about sex, it was just things that we would hear. So I oftentimes will tell you, don't judge every situation based on an individual situation. Judge based on what happens to you. So many times you hear stories about other people and you harbor these emotions inside, and then that reflects on how you deal with people. And that person had nothing to do with that incident that you had. So I would just say to be mindful of everyone that you encounter and treat people accordingly to how they treat you. Don't take it out on a community. That's like mass shooters coming here and taking it out on an entire black population of students because they had one bad encounter with a black person in a grocery store or supermarket. And when you hear these mass shooters coming into these schools, you hear, this teacher caused me harm. So you want to come back 10 years later and kill the kids and the teachers? So just look at every incident as an isolated incident, and be slow to judge. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we're judged just by being black. Just imagine how hard it is for someone who's black or trans or someone who's black and gay. Don't focus on exposing something if you hear someone, because you never know what that could cause. There were multiple kids who committed suicide on Morehouse's campus because they were exposed. They just thought their life was over. So what I would tell you is just treat everyone with kindness. And if you don't like a specific sector, then stay away from them. Like, a lot of the times we're not trying to bother you, we're just trying to get to the next place safe. So I would just say, you know, just be inclusive of other people and don't group them into all the incidents. Just, you know, judge them accordingly is what I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so we have a couple minutes left. I want to close out with just a tip, a practical tip that students can take and leave with them. So what is one thing that students can implement today or this week in order to start practicing healthier relationships really quickly?
Dating community. Not just your girlfriends, but people that you trust. You're a godparent, of aunt, or whatever. Have various levels of people and knowledge around you when you date, and allow it to be people that you're willing to tell, like, hey, I want to sleep with this person. How do I navigate this? Be willing to be honest, right? Because being grown, I knew that I was officially grown when I realized could nobody whoop me, so I could tell the truth, right? And I could be honest about who I am and where I am. And so for me, being able to have my godmother, a girlfriend, an aunt, and a professor maybe that you trust, but date in community, don't date in secret, so that way people know what's going on with you, which also means at least have one person who knows your location, right, for safety, but date in community.
There's an app called Culpability. It's in the App Store, it's free. If something is to happen to you, you can press the record button and it will automatically send emergency contacts to your live feed. So if you get put over by the police, it's called My Culpability. I'm friends with the owner and developer. It's a really, really dope app. But what I will say is take this time in college to love yourself so that you don't rely on love from someone else. This is like the prime time in your life where you really discover who you are. And I don't believe that people should interfere with that process. So what I will say, you know, when it comes to dating is love yourself and allow people to chase you. It's okay for someone to chase you down because they really like you. That just means that they really like you. But if you practice self-love, you're not looking for something to fill the void of that. So when you go back to your dorm, even if it's getting a facial, getting a little mask from the dollar store, whatever it is, just take time to spend with yourself, love yourself. If you're, if you feel like you're too big, go walk, lose some weight. If you feel like you're too skinny, go to the cafe and eat. Whatever it is that you're going through, find those insecurities that you've dealt with all through high school and just cater to yourself. And then the right person will come along and you'll be able to go into it as a whole person opposed to a piece of you. And then they end up breaking the rest that's already there. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Alrighty, guys. So I don't know if we have any time for questions, but if we do, probably not.
Yeah, we can take like 2 questions if you have real quick. Scott, anybody have any quick questions?
Any questions?
Well, let's clap for us first.
Oh, yeah, one question. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, clap, clap, clap.
There was one question right there.
Okay, I feel like in today's era, there's like a culture, like a hookup culture.
Yes.
More than like a intimacy and long-term relationships. So in college, how should we deal with, like, it's almost like the pressure of having to do that. Like a lot of our friends are like, oh yeah, girl, go get you a man, go hook up, go do this and that. But a lot of the times, like, that's not really what we're looking for. A lot of people are looking for that intimacy and that long-term relationship. Like you said, they're like, they're like settled for just sex.
Yeah.
Well, I will say judge your friends who do that, but I would say this, right? While you're judging them, just realize that a part of them is searching for something that you can't give them. So you have to allow them space to go out and explore, but you stick to your boundaries. You stick to, I love when I hear people saying I'm a virgin, and that sounds crazy, but I met a 25-year-old virgin the other day. She was absolutely beautiful, and I looked at her, I'm like, you don't want it? She's like, marriage. I said, you're gonna wait until marriage? She's like, no, I'm gonna wait until I find someone worth marrying. And it's not necessarily waiting. So if you have friends like that, don't judge them. Let them explore. But when it comes to you, I believe that self-love is the first intimacy that you can start with. And then you don't rely on it from another man. As you said, I'm looking for intimacy. You're looking for it because you don't have it. But if you learn that self-love piece of it, you'll never look for intimacy from anyone. Like, if it comes, it comes. But most men in college don't know what intimacy is. Like, you know, they just started masturbating a few months before coming to college, or they just started getting into that whole sexual thing. So give them grace, but give yourself enough grace to be like, that ain't for me, and I'm not judging what y'all want to do, that's just not my thing. But we are in a hookup culture. It's okay for them to hook up, but if that's not your lane, hey, that's not your lane. But focus on yourself before you focus on, you know, what someone else could bring to you. That's what I would say.
And I do echo what Chanel said, but I will also say, like, you're not the only person. There are boys. Like, if you're into boys, there are boys. I married my college sweetheart. Now, granted, we're divorced now, but
Girl, what's that story, child?
I know, another class. You can bring me back. We can talk about that. But I married my college, and our relationship wasn't just about sex. It wasn't just about. So there are other people who think like you that would be interested, but you have to be willing to be the odd person out. A lot of I was also an RA. A lot of my residents, my friends, they were moving different than me. But I also did have friends, like, you know, diversify your friend group. If all you have are the exploration friends, find you some friends who have a similar standard to you, so that way they can hold you accountable to not falling into the trap, because it is easy to do so. But somebody else on this campus, even if you don't end up marrying them, somebody else on this campus is a gentleman who is willing to just get to know you. There are a lot more that aren't, but it does exist. So keep pouring into yourself, like Chanel said. Find the right accountability group, or like the kind of people that are also not rushing into sexual activity, but also know that you can expect what you're looking for, and being okay with not finding it, because you're not missing out on anything. It just means that your dish might take longer to cook, and that's okay.
And also explore other campuses, right? I used to be at Georgia Tech. That's where the money at too. Georgia Tech. I used to be Georgia State. Like, explore. You have SCAD. You have the Art Institute. Explore. Don't reduce yourself to the campus that you're on. Most of the men here, you'll be like, oh, I just saw you with this girl next week. Explore. Find other men. But I believe in what you said. Like, you will find men, especially in church. If you go to church services and stuff, you will find men who haven't had sexual experiences, and they're more on getting to know you and the intimacy of getting to know you than it is just rushing into sex. So I would lean into that too.
Thank you.